Hello everyone, and welcome to the psychobiology unit of our Psych 150 class. So today we'll be talking about the brain, the nervous system, a little bit about the endocrine system, and a little bit about how it relates to sex and gender, because those all come back around to psychological concepts. So the reason why I'm starting with this unit is it's really important to understand how the brain functions and what parts of the brain are at work when we engage in different tasks, when we feel different ways, how we process information, how we use logic. What parts of the brain are we using when we're listening to a song? Or, thinking through a class, when we're listening to information, when we're tasting something, what parts of the brain that work with our body are interacting? That's what we're going to look at today. So first I want to address some common myths about the brain, because I just think these are fun. First, we only use 10% of our brain. That is false, right? That's like a theme of some movies, like, you only use 10% of your brain, unlock the full 100. And we know that because we've done so many psychological studies where even if you damage like smaller, seemingly insignificant parts of the brain, we can see lasting brain damage. These tests are done with like rats and stuff. We use all of our brain all the time. I mean, we're using all the different parts. Like our brain, some parts are, we don't have to think about using them, regulating our breathing and our heart rate. Maybe sometimes you're using other parts more than others, but you don't only use 10% of your brain. That is a myth. Listening to Mozart or classical music makes you smarter. That's a myth. I don't even know how that got started, but maybe it was rooted in some high socioeconomic status thing because they wanted to feel highfalutin with classical music. I don't know. I'm just making a guess. But, not true. People are either right-brained or left-brained. I feel like we hear this one a lot. Not true. Your brain is split into two hemispheres. That is correct, and it's connected by a bundle of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum, and signals move back and forth. Those different parts of the brain are prominent for different aspects and different parts of functioning, but you don't only use one or have a preference for one. You use them interchangeably. Drinking alcohol always kills brain cells. Not true. Only if you drink like in excess repeatedly. So drinking in excess will affect your brain cells, but, having a drink here or there is not going to destroy your brain cells. Brain damage is always permanent. Not true. The brain is a wonderful organ. It has plasticity. It can kind of adapt and function. Now, some forms of brain damage are permanent, but others can kind of heal themselves with time because the brain is this wonderful, malleable organ. The human brain is larger than any other animal brain. This is not true. It may have spawned because we were kind of anthrocentric, is that the term I want to use? Like, we're very focused on humans, but think of like a blue whale. Their brain is going to be large. Maybe in like proportion to our capacities as humans, like our thinking capacities. It's pretty large, or different parts of the brain may be larger or more efficient, but the human brain is not the largest animal brain. So next, we're going to talk about the cells of the nervous system. So the nervous system is this interconnected highway, the body's communication network, and I use this image of telephone wires so that it can kind of stick in your head. Nerves run all along our body, and it's important to understand this for psychology because it's how our body communicates. Our different emotions, experiences, pleasure, pain, emotions, language acquisition or expression, and much more. All of these different things communicate. When we're learning, we're going to talk about learning theory. How we associate a hot stove with touch and burning our hands so we never want to do that again. That's a connection between our body and our mind. And the nervous system, it plays a critical role in that. And so when we have parts of the neuron, this is on your guided reading assignment, you have to label this. Let me show you this. This darker gray area, that is the start of the neuron, okay? And then you have this long, stringy thing, very scientific language right here, right? And then it kind of branches out. Okay, so see where that synapse is? Cut this off. Okay, pretend you don't see this next part, because that's just another neuron. It's showing the chain reaction. They are not connected. There is a small, tiny space between them in which they communicate neurotransmitters and like hormones and stuff. So the dendrites are the branch-like fibers that receive the signal, the chemical signal or neurotransmitters from a giving neuron. Okay, and so the signal is going to move throughout the body of the axon. Or you see there's the soma, or the cell body. That's the nucleus. So it's going to move through that body, and it's going to trigger an action potential, which is going to cause that signal to fire. It is going to move across the axon. This is this long string that looks like it's covered in little beads. That fatty substance is called the myelin sheath. It is an insulation that helps the signal move quickly across the axon. For example, MS, multiple sclerosis, is the breakdown of that myelin sheath on when people are diagnosed with that. And what that does is it makes the message hard to contain. So pretend it's like a vacuum cleaner, okay? You plug in your vacuum cleaner and you're using it. Think of that axon as the plug cord. Okay, you know how they're coated with that plastic? It helps the electricity move through. Same thing kind of here with the axon. Once that myelin sheath starts breaking down, it's hard to contain the signal. So if I had the vacuum cleaner and I took away that plastic that was on top of it, the vacuum cleaner wouldn't work as well, if at all. And that's kind of what we see with that deterioration of the myelin sheath. It's very important for those fatty substances. Although I've learned, not all neurons have the myelin sheath on their axons, but a large portion do. So that's why I'm going to show you this picture. And so the message then goes to the synapse, or these terminal buttons, or the little endings of that axon. And from there, they're going to enter the synapse, jump the synaptic gap through that synaptic fluid, and they're going to trigger a response in the next neuron through its dendrites. And the process repeats over again. Hope that was clear enough. If not, I have included a wonderful video on this slide. So to view this, you're just going to play your PowerPoint, either from current slide or from beginning, get to the presenter view, and then it'll load and you can press play on this. It gives us a nice visual animation as to how that process works. I highly recommend you watch it, especially if you're a visual person like me. You prefer visual stimuli. But here's a zoomed in shot of that area between the presynaptic terminal button and the postsynaptic spine. So that area where it zoomed in with the circle on that one side where the two neurons met, but not touching. So our neurotransmitters and those chemical reactions are carried in little vesicles. Think of it as going on a trip. It's going on a vacation. It has all of its luggage, okay, inside of that vesicle. The vesicle is its luggage. It packs all its little neurotransmitters or clothes, to go on a trip across the synapse. Okay, so once it gets to the end of that terminal button, think terminal as an end, the vesicle will dissipate and the neurotransmitter chemical will flood into the synaptic gap where it will bind to receptor cells on the next dendrite, and that'll spark the action potential in the next neuron. Ta-da! Neurons in a nutshell. Oops, sorry about that. And this is just a fancy little picture I wanted to show you that literally talks about neurons and their action potential, how they fire. So I talked about, the neuron getting ready to send the action potential to the next neuron. Neurons either fire or they don't. They won't half go, okay? It's kind of like a roller coaster. You start with that resting potential with a negative charge inside of that neuron. But once it reaches that threshold of excitation, it's going to fire that signal. So let's say we depolarize the cell. That threshold of excitation is going to be met. The neuron is going to gain a positive charge. And once it reaches that peak action potential, it goes down. It tries to repolarize itself to set itself back. So after it's sent that action potential, it's going to try to reset. And in its attempt to do so, it gets into hyperpolarization. It gets too negative. As you can see here, that's lower than where we started. And then it resets itself back up. So think of it as a little roller coaster. You get on your roller coaster, you're getting ready to go up, and all of a sudden it takes you. And you're at the top. You can't turn back now. It's going to finish that action potential, repolarize, it's going to dip down to hyperpolarize, and then you're going to reset and get ready to send the next message. Forgot what I was going to say. But it's a lot to do with how sodium and potassium interchange throughout the sodium gates. It kind of sets off this reaction going through. And that's a little outside of the purview of our class, but I included the image just in case you were like really into the biology unit, because I know some anatomy and physiology students enjoy learning about this. So yeah, so here's the net charge when the net charge is negative in the cytoplasm of the cell. And then eventually the cell becomes more positive, allowing the potassium to flood into it, and that's what sparks that reaction. And this slide is going to show you, so I talked about neurotransmitters and vesicles, the vesicles carrying neurotransmitters, right? Well, we have different neurotransmitters. We have so many, and they're responsible for so many actions and their potential on our behavior, and this is where we see that mind and body coming together. So you have the neurotransmitters acetylcholine, beta-endorphin, dopamine, GABA, glutamate, norepinephrine, serotonin. You know, people say that joke, thanks for giving me my daily dose of serotonin. It comes from this idea because these different neurotransmitters have very involved functions in our body. So serotonin, for example, affects our mood. Serotonin makes us happy, and too much, we're kind of sad. Norepinephrine or epinephrine, they have similar features, but involved in our heart, intestines, and alertness, so increasing arousal and suppressed appetite. So sometimes when we're stimulated or aroused, our body, fight or flight, fawn or freeze response, you know, that trigger, that stress trigger, that is going to increase our arousal, our alertness, and involvement. Yeah, there's a whole list of, this is just major neurotransmitters. So review that list. Kind of get familiar with it, and know that, you know, different neurotransmitters are going to be secreted depending on what part of the brain is being activated, you know, what we're trying to execute with our body, and how that'll affect our behavior. And then we have parts of the nervous system. You know what? I'm going to start this as part 2 of the next video, so stay tuned.